What if the voice inside your head is not actually you? Every day it whispers, it judges, it replays your failures like an old film that never ends. You call it thinking. But what if it's just a habit, a voice you inherited, not one you chose? Today, I will show you how to speak to that voice, how to change it, quiet it, and finally make peace with it. By the end of this, you will know the one shift that can turn your own mind from your harshest critic into your deepest source of healing. 1. The voice you never question. Sit still for a moment, just for a moment, and listen, not to the sounds around you, but to the sound inside you. There is a voice in there. It has been speaking to you since before you could speak back. It comments on your face in the mirror. It grades your performance at work. It replays your mistakes at 2 a.m, when the rest of the world is asleep and you are wide awake, trapped in a conversation you never agreed to have. You call this voice yourself. You assume it knows you best because it has never left your side. But tell me, did you choose its words? Did you sit down one day and decide, this is how I will speak to myself for the rest of my life? No. That voice was given to you by a parent's frustration, by a teacher's careless comment, by a moment of shame you were too young to understand. You inherited it the way you inherited the color of your eyes, without consent, without awareness. And here is what troubles me most. We spend our whole lives listening to advice from other people, weighing their words carefully, deciding who to trust and who to doubt. Yet the voice we trust the most, the one we never question, is the one inside our own head. We give it complete authority. We let it speak first, speak loudest, and speak last. We let it define what is true about us, simply because it arrived before we knew to ask where it came from. I want you to try something. The next time that voice speaks, the next time it says, you always do this, or you're not good enough, or why would anyone choose you? I want you to pause, not to argue with it, just to ask one quiet question. Whose voice is this, really? Because a mind that has never questioned its own narrator is a mind ruled by a stranger wearing your face. This is not a small thing. This is the beginning of everything. Before you can heal, before you can grow, before you can build the life you were meant to build, you must first realize that the voice narrating your worth is not a fact. It is a habit. And habits, no matter how old, no matter how loud, can be changed. But to change it, you must understand something deeper. You must understand why this voice keeps saying the same things over and over, like a record stuck on one groove. And that answer will surprise you. 2. Why your mind repeats what it believes. Here is a truth that took me many years to understand. Your mind does not search for what is true. It searches for what is familiar. Think about that. Not what is true, what is familiar. If you were told as a child that you were too much, too loud, too sensitive, too slow, your mind did not simply hear it once and let it go. It took that sentence and turned it into a lens. And from that day forward, it began collecting evidence. Every rejection became proof. Every silence in a room became confirmation. Every mistake became another entry in a file it had already decided to keep. This is not weakness. This is how the mind survives. Your brain wants consistency more than it wants happiness. A familiar pain feels safer than an unfamiliar joy, because the pain, at least, it already knows how to survive. So it repeats the old story again and again, not to hurt you, but because somewhere long ago it decided this story was the truth about who you are, and it has been protecting that truth ever since. Ask yourself, how many times have you succeeded at something, and instead of feeling proud, some part of you whispered, it won't last, or you got lucky. That is not humility. That is a mind so loyal to its old story that it cannot accept new evidence, even when the evidence is standing right in front of it, wearing your own achievement as its face. This is why simply thinking positive so often fails. You cannot drown out 20 years of repeated belief with one hopeful sentence said in a mirror. The old voice will always answer back, louder, more convincing, because it has had years of practice, and you have had only days. But here is what gives me hope, and what should give you hope too. If the mind can be trained to repeat pain, it can be trained to repeat peace. The same mechanism that built your wound can build your healing. It is not broken. It is simply pointed in the wrong direction, and a compass, once you notice it is wrong, can always be turned. The question is no longer whether your mind can change. It can. The question is what happens in the space just before it speaks, that half second before the old voice opens its mouth. And in that space, something extraordinary is waiting for you. 3. The silence before self-judgment. There is a gap, a small one, between the moment something happens to you and the moment your mind decides what it means. You drop something, you forget a name, someone doesn't reply to your message. And in that half second before your mind says, "You're so careless," or "You're forgettable," or "They don't care about you," in that half second there is silence, pure, unclaimed silence. No judgment has entered yet, no old story has spoken yet. That moment belongs to no one but you. Most people never notice this gap. They move through life so quickly, so reactively, that the old voice fills the silence before they even realize a choice existed. But I am telling you now, that gap is where your power lives. Not in controlling what happens to you, not in silencing the old voice completely, because that voice, formed over years, will not vanish in a day. Your power lives in what you choose to place inside that silence, before the old story rushes in to claim it. This is not about pretending nothing hurts. Pain is real. Loss is real. Disappointment in yourself on the days you fall short, that is real too. I am not asking you to lie to yourself and call every wound a blessing. I am asking you to do something far more difficult and far more honest, to meet that gap with awareness before the old voice meets it with judgment. Try this the next time you make a mistake. Before the familiar sentence arrives, the one that has criticized you 1,000 times before, stop, breathe once, and ask in that silence, what would I say to someone I loved, standing exactly where I am standing now? Notice how different that answer sounds. Notice how it is still honest. It does not deny the mistake, but it does not attack you for making it either. This gap, this small silent space, is where healing quietly begins. Not with a single grand moment of transformation, but with hundreds of small choices, made in seconds you almost missed, to answer yourself with understanding instead of condemnation. And once you learn to live inside that gap, once you learn to meet yourself there, again and again, patiently, without giving up when the old voice tries to return, you will discover something the old voice never told you. You were never as broken as it claimed. You were only ever unheard by the one person who was always listening. Yourself. There is more to uncover in how we speak to that self once we've found it in the silence. But that is a conversation for what comes next. 4. Speaking to yourself like a wise teacher. Think of the best teacher you have ever known. Not the one who was easiest on you, the one who was honest with you and still, somehow, made you want to try again. A good teacher does not scream when a student fails. A good teacher does not call the student worthless, hopeless, a disappointment. A good teacher says, "This did not work. Let us understand why. Let us try once more." There is correction in that voice, yes, but there is also faith. Faith that the student is capable of more. Now ask yourself honestly, is this how you speak to yourself when you fail? For most people, the answer is no. Most people become their own harshest critic, not their own wisest teacher. They would never speak to a friend the way they speak to themselves in the quiet of their own mind. If a friend came to you and said, "I made a mistake at work today," you would not say, "You are useless, you ruin everything you touch." You would say, "That happens. What did you learn? What will you do differently tomorrow?" Why then do you reserve your cruelest words for the one person who hears you the most, yourself? This is not about being soft. A wise teacher is not soft. A wise teacher tells the truth even when it is uncomfortable. But truth and cruelty are not the same language. You can say, "I did not prepare well enough," without saying, "I am a failure." One is an observation. It points to a path forward. The other is a verdict. It offers no path at all, only a sentence with no release date. I want you to notice the difference between a voice that teaches and a voice that punishes. A teacher's voice asks, "What can I learn?" A punisher's voice only asks, "What is wrong with me?" One moves you forward. The other keeps you circling the same spot over and over, like a prisoner pacing a cell of his own design. Becoming your own teacher does not happen overnight. It is a practice, like any other. It begins the moment you catch the punishing voice, mid-sentence. and you gently, firmly replace its words, not with empty praise, not with everything is fine when it is not, but with the steady, grounded tone of someone who believes you can improve and says so plainly without shouting. This shift from punisher to teacher changes everything that follows. Because once you speak to yourself with this kind of honesty and patience, you unlock something most people search for their entire lives without knowing where to look. 5. The one sentence that rewires pain. There is a sentence I have carried with me for many years, through many difficult seasons, through failures I do not need to describe to you, because you have your own. The sentence is simple. It does not need decoration. It does not need clever wording. It is this. This is hard, and I am still here. Say it slowly. This is hard. No denial. No pretending the pain is smaller than it is. You are not lying to yourself. You are not forcing false positivity onto a wound that is still open. You are simply telling the truth about the difficulty. And I am still here. Not and I will be fine. Not and everything happens for a reason. Just, you are still here. Present, breathing, standing, even if you are only barely standing. This sentence does something remarkable to the mind. It does not fight the pain, and pain that is fought only grows stronger, the way a rope pulled tighter only tightens further on both ends. Instead, this sentence sits beside the pain. It acknowledges it without being consumed by it, and in that acknowledgement, something shifts. The mind, which was bracing for a battle, suddenly realizes there is no battle required, only presence, only witness. I have used this sentence in moments I do not enjoy remembering, in moments of loss, in moments of doubt so heavy I could not see beyond the next hour, let alone the next year, and each time it did not erase the pain. I want to be honest with you about that because I do not believe in false promises. It did not erase the pain, but it changed my relationship to the pain. It moved me from drowning in it to standing beside it, and standing beside your pain, rather than beneath it, is the beginning of every recovery I have ever witnessed, in myself and in others. Try it the next time life becomes difficult. Not someday, but the very next time. Do not rush past the sentence. Do not say it quickly just to move on. Say it slowly, and let both halves be true at once. This is hard, and I am still here. Both truths held gently at the same time. This single sentence, repeated in your hardest moments, begins to rewire something deep within you, something that no longer waits for pain to disappear before it allows you to feel whole again. And once this becomes part of how you carry yourself, you step into a role you may not yet believe you deserve. 6. Becoming the voice you needed all along. There was a time in your life, perhaps you were very young, perhaps the memory is faint now, when you needed someone to say, you are enough exactly as you are. Someone to say, I am proud of you, without conditions attached. Some of you received that voice. Many of you did not. And if you did not receive it then, you have spent years, perhaps without realizing it, searching for someone else to say it for you now. I want to offer you something different, not a search and arrival. You do not need to wait any longer for that voice to come from outside of you. You have spent this entire journey learning to notice the old voice, question its authority, understand why it repeats itself, meet it with silence instead of judgment, and speak to yourself the way a wise teacher speaks, with honesty and with faith. Every step of that path was leading here, to this final understanding. You were never missing an external voice. You were missing your own willingness to become that voice for yourself. This does not mean the old pain disappears completely. It does not mean you will never hear the critical voice again. It will return sometimes on tired days, on difficult days, but now you will recognize it. You will pause in the gap before it speaks. You will remember the sentence that holds both truth and strength together, and you will answer not as the wounded child who first inherited that voice, but as the steady teacher you have practiced becoming. This is what healing actually looks like, not a single dramatic moment where all pain vanishes. Healing looks like 1,000 quiet choices repeated patiently to meet yourself with the same compassion you would offer anyone you loved. It looks like catching yourself mid-sentence and choosing different words. It looks like standing beside your pain instead of running from it. It looks like becoming, slowly and honestly, the voice you always needed, not because someone finally arrived to give it to you, but because you decided to give it to yourself. Carry this with you when you leave this moment. The voice inside you does not have to remain the one you inherited. It can become the one you build, sentence by sentence, choice by choice, until the person speaking in your mind sounds less like an old wound and more like someone who finally believes in you.